everybody know what a BOGO sale is? Buy one, get one free? You like them? I'm a sucker for them. Anyway, this is a BOGO lesson. Actually, it's one lesson, 3 stories, but I'm going to try to follow the script because if I start talking, I tend to ramble, and then John won't get a chance. Anyway, this is, when John asked me to speak, I immediately thought, since the theme is Travels with Jesus, that there were lessons, and several lessons I've had from mission trips that I've been on. And I'd like to tell you about one that keeps recurring. So there's 3 stories. The first example was in 1998 when Angel Cooper and Donna Mickle and I took the youth group to Puerto Rico. We made all the necessary arrangements for food and lodging and transportation, but we had no idea what we were going to be asked to do when we got there. So we had all the kids bring a hammer. You know, that's kind of a universal construction tool. Thought, yeah, we'd be doing something with a hammer. As it turned out, what they wanted us to do was to paint a gathering room that they had for children's programs. So we should have brought the other universal tool, the paintbrush. But anyway, when we got in and looked around, we found that on one wall there was something resembling a Precious Moments figure. Do you remember Precious Moments? They're the children with the outsized heads and the really big eyes, and they're usually holding a puppy or a butterfly or something that just makes them look adorable. Okay, there was one of those. Now, by coincidence, or maybe not coincidence, Angel had brought a Precious Moments coloring book along for kids to pass the time in the airport or on the 4-hour flight. Well, that was all we needed because we had a resident artist, which we already knew, Katie Heritage, grabbed a pencil, started sketching them on the wall. I went to the hardware store and got paint, and we just set about painting. And the reason we knew what we were going to do and how to go about it was we had just spent the entire school year painting scenes from Bible stories on the basement walls in the fellowship house. That's where the youth group was meeting. It was like we were practicing all year for what we were going to do in the mission. And we just didn't know it. And in retrospect, we said, you know, the point here, I think the lesson we were supposed to learn was you didn't have to plan everything to the nth degree in detail. You didn't have to train for everything. Not that there's anything wrong with planning and training, but the point was God was there ahead of us. He knew what our skills were, and all we had to do is show up and do it. That happened again last summer when we sent 14 people from this church to help with the rebuilding in Puerto Rico after the hurricanes there. There were about 4 of us had any kind of construction experience, and we knew we were going to be doing construction, and the concern was, would everybody be able to participate? As it turned out, once again, God was there ahead of us. What we were asked to do was to mix concrete by hand. And the necessary tool was a shovel. Guess what? Everybody knew how to use a shovel. Isn't that amazing? And so we were able to complete our work, and everybody could contribute equally, and we got as much done as they had hoped we would, and had time to take off and go to the beach. So once again, the point was God was there ahead of us. We just needed to show up and do our part. And the third story was just a couple of weeks ago. And I had to walk all of 4 blocks from my house down to the Broadway Theater in Pittman. And Nancy and I had decided just at the kind of the last minute to go see Peter Yarrow. Now that's Peter and Peter, Paul, and Mary, if you remember that group. Most of you are old enough to remember them. He's 81. He's still touring. So we went down. You would also remember him. He's the guy that wrote Puff the Magic Dragon. Everybody knows that, right? So we expected to hear that, and indeed we did. We heard a lot of Peter, Paul, and Mary's stories, or songs. But we also heard a lot of stories from on the road, the people involved, how songs came to be. And along the way, also a bit of history and quite a bit of social commentary. He is still, at 81, quite the activist. And one of the stories he was telling was about living in America as a Jewish person. And one of the things he said that I caught, partly because I was already thinking about what I might say as far as travels with Jesus. He had a very short phrase in Hebrew, and it translates to this, and it's been something that's guided him. He said, the saying is, "You are not responsible for solving all the world's problems, but you are absolutely responsible for doing your part when you get the opportunity." And like I said, I was already thinking along these lines, and I just heard that as confirmation. And it doesn't matter if you go halfway around the world like Bob Biden does, or if you go across the street to your neighbor like I know many of you already do. The important thing in many cases is to just show up and do your part. And that's my lesson. Thanks.